Hey YouTube, it's Faye, and for today's video, I'm going to show you how I bleed the brakes on my 1998 Toyota 4Runner. And if you watched my last couple of videos, I showed you how to test the brake fluid in a couple different ways with copper testing strips and a moisture tester. I did both of those in my 4Runner, and my brake fluid failed miserably. So I'm going to be bleeding my brakes today. Now I'm going to be showing you a couple different ways. First of all, I'm going to show you with my air compressor and an awesome tool like this. But if you don't have an air compressor and you don't have one of these, no big deal. Next step is I will show you how to do this with the help of a friend. And if you don't have any friends, that's fine too. There's also a way to do it without friends. Just by yourself, no air compressor, and I don't know, barely any tools, I suppose. Now, before I get started, I will note that I have the very, very basic Toyota 4Runner. I do have ABS, so non-ABS 4Runners will have a load sensing proportioning valve. So there's an extra step that I won't be able to show you in this video if you have a 3rd gen 4Runner non-ABS. Also, this technique can apply to most cars. It will not apply to all cars. So this does apply, however, to a 1998 Toyota 4Runner with ABS. All right, so without further ado, let's get right into it. So satisfying every time. And if you want hood struts like mine, I have a video on that, so click link in description. All right, so no matter what vehicle we drive, we're gonna start underneath the hood at the master cylinder. And actually, maybe like a little bit of a step before that, I don't know if I should mention this because it might just be superstition, but I had a mentor tell me once that you should pump the brake pedal a couple times to like sort of stir up the stuff in the fluid and the master cylinder and then help you, you know, suck more of it out. I don't know if that's actually true or not, or if it's just superstition, but I do it now anyway. So if you want to do it and be part of the superstition with me, then go ahead and pump your brake pedal first. If you think that's a little garbage, that's fine too. We're gonna head over to the master cylinder, and the first thing I'm gonna do is suck all the fluid out of the reservoir. Now, once again, if you do not have one of these really fancy suction bleeders like I do, I didn't always used to have one of these. So I actually used to use a turkey baster and suck the fluid out of the reservoir. And then of course clean it really well after. I will say you also don't need a really nice one like this Capri Tools one. I bought one for like 20 bucks at Harbor Freight like 6 or 7 years ago. It always was fine. Didn't give me any problems. However, obviously this one is a lot nicer and works a lot better. I'm gonna start with nice clean magnetic tray here. Taking off my cap, making sure I don't spill any fluid. I'll just set that right there. And I'm just gonna go ahead and remove the little cup that's inside of the master cylinder, little cup with screen. So I'm gonna do this by using my little 90-degree pick. And you can see that there's a little bit of a step here. So I'm going to be pushing on the back side of the tab. And I use the 90-degree pick part to lift up on the tab and get it started. And there's another one back here, so I'm going to sort of reach in and lift up, and I'll actually hold on to the reservoir so I'm not pushing the little reservoir seals there. And then just gently rotating it with fingers and 90-degree pick. Then we're going to let all the fluid drain out, get a rag, and move it over onto my magnetic tray. And this is just a holding place for these things, and then also any tools that I need. I'm actually going to take this and clean it out really well, make sure that there's no debris left in this screen, but I'm going to do that a little bit later before I put everything back together. I'm also going to do it with brake clean. I'm going to let it air dry, but we'll get to that in a second. Now we expose all the nastiness that's in my brake fluid reservoir. Oh my god, look how look how nasty that is. But you can see there's a bunch of debris in there. Now, color does not always indicate that the fluid is good or bad. I mean, it can give you a hint. Obviously, this is bad, just from looking at like the floaties and the debris in there. But just because the color's dark doesn't mean it's bad, or the color's light means that it's like, you know, perfect. But okay, so now that we've fluid shamed Grim, I'm gonna start by connecting this to the air compressor, building up a little bit of pressure, and I'm gonna use this to suck everything out of this disgusting brake fluid reservoir, because I don't want to suck this grossness to the entire system, right? So if the end goal is to have clean fluid throughout the entire thing, sucking all this fluid through all the lines is, I don't know, it's probably gonna do more harm than good. So we're gonna start right here. So you really want to make sure that you get in like every single little nook and cranny and get out all the dirt and debris that you possibly can. And this is probably like way excessive, but sometimes I'll even go ahead and I'll put a little bit more fluid in there, fresh, clean fluid, fill it up again just because my reservoir was like so freaking gross. And actually, if you're wondering what this little bottle is, this is part of my Harbor Freight kit I still have, and it's, you know, still perfectly good. So that's kind of cool. It's just got a little one-way valve, and then you just put it upside down and it doesn't leak. You open up the valve and then it just makes sure that the reservoir is full. I'll use this in just a second and I'll show you more about that. But now, yeah, there's even more fluid in there and it sort of stirred it up a little bit more. Looking in there again, I still see a bunch of debris. So I'm gonna go ahead and suck that out and then I'll fill it again and then I'll get started. And now I'm gonna fill the reservoir all the way to the top with clean fluid. Now that it's all the way full, I'm gonna go ahead and refill up my bleeder bottle and I'm gonna find a little setting here that works with my reservoir. This is a little bit small for this one, so yeah, that looks like a better fit. All right, so now I've got it full of clean fluid. I'm just gonna turn it upside down on the reservoir here, and then I'm going to open up the valve. So now we're done up top. And obviously you wanna do this on a straight and level surface because this might tip over. Sometimes when I was like nervous about it tipping over, I would bungee it in place or use like a little bit of mechanics wire. But in this case, now that it's in place and it's just me and I'm not gonna be jacking the vehicle up or anything like that, I feel pretty confident that it's just gonna be fine. So now we're done up here. And now you can see that I'm in the right rear side of my 4Runner, and I've got my cardboard here, and I've got my lovely little kneeling pad, and my brake clean, a couple rags, and my brake bleeder bottle, and my favorite 1/4" drive ratchet and my 10mm socket and a flashlight. And as a general rule of thumb, you'd like to start as far away from the master cylinder as possible and work your way up. And in my particular case, the right rear is the furthest away from the master cylinder. So underneath I go, and let's get started. Go ahead and locate the little brake bleeder there on the back of, in my case, the wheel cylinder, because I have rear drum brakes. And I've got my 10mm socket. And just gonna go ahead and loosen it nicely. Now that it's loose, I can open it a little bit more with my fingers, and I'm gonna go ahead and put my hose, my brake bleeder hose, right on there. And I think you can tell that already I managed to beat the fluid. It already started coming out on its own. I'm gonna go ahead and engage my brake bleeder and suction all of this out. So if your brake fluid was as discolored as mine was to begin with, and you have a nice clear line on your vacuum bleeder like I do, then you'll be able to see that transition, so you'll know when all of that fluid is clean and clear. If you can't tell if your fluid just tested bad but looked okay, then just wait for the fluid in that bleeder bottle to drop about, you know, 1/2 inch to 1 inch or so. You know, honestly, the more that you vacuum out the lines, the better, and put that new fluid in and flush out old stuff, the better. So yeah, just wait about 1 inch or so in that bottle and then remove the hose. Now I still have my vacuum bleeder engaged, and that's because after I remove the hose, the suction is gonna clean that line for me, so I'm not gonna drip brake fluid everywhere. And then keep in mind that all the bleeder valves are at the absolute top of the system, so you're gonna get any excess air out of there. So say that you are concerned that maybe in the process of bleeding you left a little air bubble in there. I like to wait for the fluid to come out by itself. I can see that it has burped the air out of its little system, and then I'll go ahead and tighten it back down. And now I'm gonna go ahead and repeat this exact same thing on the rear driver's side. Well, not without cleaning it off first though. Also, I'm noticing that I don't have a little cap. That's better. You can buy a set of these, like, I don't know, 50 or something, really cheap off Amazon. I'll link them in the description. And now moving on to the left rear or rear driver's side for the exact same process. Okay, so if you don't have an air compressor, then hop online and get yourself a couple pairs of these. Now for the 4Runner, I've got the same thread pitch in the front and the rear. Here it is. And so I got 2 sets of these and I could do the full truck by myself without an air compressor. How these work is you install them in place of the regular bleeders in the back of the caliper or the back of the wheel cylinder. While installing, leave them a little bit loose. And with your ignition key in the on position, go ahead and pump the brake pedal. Now I'm just showing you a couple times, not to bore you, but go ahead and do this between 5 and 10 times. And just make sure that you're not aggressively pumping the brakes. A very gentle, slow pump will do. And how this works is that there is a one-way spring-loaded check valve inside that will allow the old fluid to escape, but will not allow it to come back inside of the caliper. So therefore, you're not introducing any air and you're not bringing that old nasty fluid back into the caliper. Yay! Then, since I have my air bleeder attached, I'm gonna get ready, and as I take this off, engage the air bleeder. Okay, so I cleared my hose. Go ahead and tighten that all the way. Moving on to the 4th and final side, I'm going to enlist the help of a buddy. Go ahead and stick them in the driver's seat, and I'm going to swap out my 10mm socket on ratchet in favor for this line wrench. You can absolutely use a regular wrench. You do not need a line wrench. I just prefer it. Okay, so go ahead and turn the key into the on position, not the run position, but the on position. And when I say pump, go ahead and pump the brake pedal 3 times very slowly. And when you're done, let me know by saying holding. Go ahead and pump. And it's important to have your buddy do this slowly, because if you do this too aggressively, you can actually cause damage to the seals in the master cylinder, especially if you have an older vehicle that hasn't had their brake system bled in a while.
Holding.
And as you release the bleeder screw, your buddy is gonna feel his or her foot sink all the way to the floor. Then tighten it back up and instruct them again. Go ahead and pump. And if you find that the brake pedal gets stuck down, just go ahead, reach down, grab it with your hands, and pull it back up to its full position.
Holding.
And then their foot will once again probably sink down to the floor. And since this is the last side, you've seen me do all 3 now. This is 4 out of 4, and this brake line is very short in relation to the master cylinder, and I can see how clean the fluid is now. I'm gonna stop there, but if this is your first time flushing the fluid and you're maybe at the rear of the vehicle, you should probably do this 5, 6, or maybe even 7 times, depending on the size of your vehicle and the size of your hydraulic system. You are dismissed! All right, so now that we've bled all 4 corners of our hydraulic braking system, it's now time to return back to the reservoir. You can see behind me, I've already removed the bleeder bottle, and the level is not quite full yet. It actually drops down in the reservoir as it also drops down in the bleeder bottle. So I'm gonna go ahead and adjust that level, but first I'm gonna take my screen and I'm gonna clean that really nice and clean and let it air dry. And I'm a little bit of a freak. Not only do I clean it really well with brake clean, but then I also rinse it with like filtered or distilled water, like bottled water, just that any of that residue is gone. Obviously you don't want any brake clean residue into your brake system. So let that air dry. And in the meantime, I'm gonna put the cap back on the reservoir and I'm gonna go ahead and dispose of my used brake fluid. And you can dispose of used brake fluid the same way that you dispose of used engine oil. So in my case, when I'm at home and I'm not near my oil recycling container, I will put my used brake fluid or any other used fluid in clear bottles, and then you can just drop them off at your local parts store. A lot of times O'Reilly's, Napa, AutoZone, they'll take your old used motor oil, and that's what they do in Texas. I'm not sure if they do that anywhere. Or you can go to like a Jiffy Lube or any of your local oil change places, and they can also recycle your used brake fluid for you. I just like to make sure that I put it in a clear jug without a label on it and just let them know like, hey, this is used engine oil, or in this case, this is used brake fluid, and they will take that off of your hands for you. Once that little cup is nice and dry, you can go ahead and put that screen back inside of the reservoir and go ahead and top that off to the fill line if you like. I like to top it off to exactly where the fluid level was before I started the service. I give the reason why for this in my measuring your brake pad video, and I'll link that in the description or maybe somewhere up here right now. So now that we are finished topping off our fluid, the next most important thing to do is now, before you go anywhere or before you deliver the car back to the customer, test your brakes now. Test them now. very slowly, give a little pump with the key on, slowly move back and forth, make sure that you have no problems, then do a quick test drive before you consider yourself done. Okay, so now you've topped off your fluid, now you've verified that your brakes work, now you've disposed of your old fluid. Freaking fantastic! Now we're done! Oh wait, but I'm not done yet, because I told you I was going to show you how to do this entire job without any fancy tools. And last I checked, this is kind of a fancy tool, right? So what if you don't have one of these? Or what if you even don't have the cheap, crappy Harbor Freight one? Then what? Well, I'm going to show you that next before I finish this video. Making your own brake fluid bleeder bottle is really cheap and really easy. You're going to need an old coat hanger, a metal coat hanger, an empty water bottle or any plastic bottle, some aquarium tubing, and this can come in a couple flavors. You can get this translucent blue one or this hard plastic one. I actually prefer this one for the reason that it's clear, but it also tends to be a little bit more stiff, whereas this aquarium tubing is a little softer and more like what I have on the Capri Tools or even the Harbor Freight. We're gonna start by taking our water bottle and leaving the cap on. I'm gonna drill a hole in it about here. And I say leave the cap on because then you can actually like put some pressure behind it, you know? And you can also just, you don't have to drill. This is kind of overkill. Okay, that drill bit was a little dull. All right, now that I've got my hole, I'm gonna take my snips and you can see that I marked it out. I'm just gonna cut the top of the coat hanger off, leaving it like so. Now I'm going to take the top of the water bottle off. One of the sides of this coat hanger is going to be used to hang from suspension components or maybe like a coil spring on a strut. The other side is going to sit inside of the brake fluid bleeder bottle like so. So now that we've got this, then we're going to cut a piece of our aquarium hose to length, and you can actually buy this by the foot. So you can buy this at any pet store. I just found this at PetSmart. I'm going to stick it in the bottle, and then using one of my little twist ties, these are just like from the produce in the grocery store, I'm gonna just tie it into place. Here it is. It's totally ready to go. Now I'm gonna use this side to hang it from my suspension component, and then this will be able to reach the bleeder on the caliper or the wheel cylinder or whatever. Then when I'm done bleeding all the fluid into here, it'll be very easy to just remove the bottle, dump out the fluid, put it back together, and then the shorter end for storage can go right inside and rest on the end of the coat hanger so that it's not like just dripping fluid all over the place and making a mess. So there it is, all contained, and now you can just hang it up with the rest of your tools. Ta-da! Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and if you did, then perhaps leave a thumbs up. Maybe consider subscribing if you want to. And definitely leave me a comment though. I love getting all of your comments, and especially if you use one of my tutorials to help you on your own personal vehicle. I always love reading those, and they really just like give me the strength to keep on making more of these in my spare time. So, all right, I'll see you in my next video. Bye!
Okay, and I know that this is not a chicken, but oh my god, look at this snail in my fish tank. Look at his little mouth. I had to share this, it was just so freaking funny. Okay, don't worry, here's a chicken.
You win.
You're so